crawling out from under the cello. I think we should sing happy birthday. Is that okay if we sing happy birthday? She's turning 7 today. Come up here, Ivy. Come on, I know you're not shy. No? Hiding behind the cello? I did that many times when I was littler. And her name is Ivy. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ivy. Happy birthday to you. So happy you come to be with us in our church family. And good morning, everyone. So on this kind of sloppy day out there, I saw some beautiful white stuff coming down, but it's turning to something else now. We're going to be starting with a welcome song. It's called Draw the Circle Wide.
Even though it's a snowy one, let us rejoice and be glad in it. If this is the first time, or it's the first time you've been here in a while, take a moment and fill out the pew pads that you see in your pews, because we'd like to get to know you a little bit better. It's also where you can make special requests for prayers, so that we know the things that you're concerned about. Please take a moment and do that. Also, if it's the first time you've been here in a while, we do have some welcome packets. They are in the back. Take a moment, and we'd love to hand one to you. You can come see me or Pastor Marty after the service, and we'd be happy to get you one. If I could speak today, it would be great. And I'm going to turn it over to Christine for a moment.
Good morning. I think you all know me, but if you don't, I'm Christine McDonald. I am the chair of Church Council and the co-chair of the Social Action and Missions team. So I'm going to put on my Church Council hat first and remind you that our annual Charge Conference is on November 30th. If you don't know what that is, it's basically our annual business meeting where we kind of review what happened in the past year and look ahead to what's going to happen in the coming year. Everyone is welcome to attend. You don't have to be a member of the church to come. We are having a potluck supper first at 6 o'clock. This is a Wednesday evening. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll start the church conference with Reverend Bob Long presiding. If you are a chair of any committee like I am, you need to have your annual reports into the church office by Tuesday the 22nd. So we only have 2 more days to get those done, so don't forget those. Now with Social Action and Missions, just wanted to give you a couple updates. If you were not here last week or have not been on Facebook, you might wonder why there are pictures of safety pins on our doors or why some of us are wearing safety pins. And that's a symbol that means you're safe with me. So if someone in a marginalized group is being discriminated against or bullied, by seeing your safety pin, then they know that they can turn to you for help, for intervention, for support. There are safety pins in the back on the Welcome Center and up here at the front usher's table if you would like to wear one of those. We had a group yesterday making pies for Joseph's House for Thanksgiving. If you're wondering what our Thanksgiving activity was, they did 10 homemade pies for Joseph's House to serve at the houses at the shelter for Thanksgiving dinner. So we thank the bakers, which I know included Marty and Lee Kemp and Melissa, and I know there were others, and I'm sorry I don't have everybody's names. Also to celebrate Thanksgiving, we're doing a 50-50 offering split, which if you saw the email bulletin today, you already read about. But we are doing our traditional split of our holiday offering for Thanksgiving. We're going to be splitting our proceeds with the Southern Poverty Law Center. If you don't know about them, their website is splc.org. And basically they're an organization that's been around since 1971, and they exist to fight discrimination and intolerance through education and through litigation. So half of what you give today will go to support Christ Church programs, and half will go to support the Southern Poverty Law Center. And one last thing before I turn it back to Joel is that we're also thinking ahead to Christmas. And this year we are providing Christmas gifts for the children who are in Joseph's House shelter programs. So on the back Welcome Center, you will see a list of toys that moms have picked out for their kids that they think their children would like. Each gift would cost under $25. You can sign up for one, you can sign up for multiples, it's up to you. You're going to wrap them, put the child's name on them, and bring them to the church office by December 16th, and then Joseph's House staff will distribute them to the children. So I hope that you will consider participating in that giving program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. And I wrote a letter to our local imam, Jafar Sabokai. He is one of the imams. He started out here in Troy. He went to RPI, and the mosque used to be here in Troy, but they've just built a new one about a year and a half ago in Latham, and he's part of the downtown Troy Interfaith Clergy. And as you have heard on the news, there's been a lot of hate speech and frightening things talked about toward the Muslim community. So I just wanted to write a letter of support, and it also quotes some actions that one of our local rabbis, Rabbi Deborah Gordon from Temple Berith Shalom, she gave me permission to quote her pledge of action and support. So I wanted to be from the congregation, but if you'd like to sign it, I'm going to send it out after today so they know that our folks, our brothers and sisters in the Muslim community will know that we're with them. We'll be back in the Welcome Center.
So a couple more announcements. That is, after church, we have our coffee out this door to the right. Follow the people and food. There's food for everybody, so we take into account people with food allergies. Please take a moment and get to know us a little bit better. Also, as Christine mentioned, Joseph's House, the shelters for the winter, we are part of the overflow shelter in from the cold. And if you're interested in being a member or donating some of your time to those people that are staying upstairs here and get to know some of the people in the community, please see myself, or there's contact information for Janet Douglas in the bulletin. Take a moment and think about that. If that's something that you can do, if you can sleep upstairs for one night and make a difference for somebody else, it'll also make a difference for you. Also, we have Christmas flowers are still available. You can see Marilyn. You'll see that announcement is also in the bulletin. So please, if you're interested in getting a point set up, talk to Marilyn. She'd be happy to set you up with one. Marilyn's up here in the front. This holiday season, this Advent season, we are exploring our journey together with Christ, questioning and serving and growing. Today we're questioning together on that journey through Advent. So if you take a moment and think about the questions and the people that you have met along your journey, because we do meet people along the way, some of them a little bit more interesting, some of them a little bit more out of the ordinary. Take a moment and think about the questions that you've come up with, the ones that are burning in your heart or in your soul for this holiday season. Take a moment to think, question, as we'll go together, questioning, serving, and growing for the remainder of Advent. Thanks for spending time with us today, and I'll turn it over to Gail.
Good morning. I'm Gail Turp. I'm a member of this church, and I'm doing the call to worship. This week, the service is all about Thanksgiving and the people in our lives that are our family, whether they're blood relatives or not. And the story is Are You My Mother by P.D. Eastman. It's a story about a baby bird who, through a series of leaps of faith, finds his mother. A mother bird sat on her nest. The egg jumped. This cued her that she needed to go out and get some food, so she flies off. While she's gone, the egg hatches. And the first words out of his mouth were, "Where is my mother?" This is his first leap of faith, that he has a mother. He couldn't see his mother from his nest, so he hopped off the nest and fell to the ground. And the baby bird could not fly, but he could walk. So off he goes saying, "Now I will find my mother." He doesn't know what his mother looks like, but he has no doubt that he can find her. And that's his second leap of faith. He comes to a series of animals, a kitten, a hen, a dog, a cat, a cow, and he says, "Are you my mother?" And they say, "Well, no, how could I be your mother?" Even with these setbacks, the bird does not give up. He says, "I did have a mother. I know I did. I have to find her. I will. I will." No doubt there, he has his setbacks, but he's full of faith that he will find his mother. However, he does get a little desperate. He thinks he sees his mother in a car, a boat, a plane, and finally a crane. He calls the crane Snort. He hopped on the crane's bucket and immediately realized this was a bad idea. It started to move. But this crane takes him back to his tree and sits him down on his nest. And who should come along? Well, of course, his mother, with a big Jersey worm in her mouth. And she says, "Do you know who I am?" This is the best part. He says, "Yes, I know who you are. You are not a kitten. You are not a hen. You are not a dog. You are not a cow. You are not a boat or a plane or a snort. You are a bird, and you are my mother." So, as I was getting ready to do this, I started to think about someone very important in my life, and that is my adopted son, Brian. Brian came to me when he was 3.5, And this was after a long road of neglect and a series of foster homes. I was his 7th home. But we were a great fit. And several months after his placement, we flew home to see my family. And as he got on the plane, he had only one thought in his mind. He was going to meet his family. He knew that he loved my family without even meeting them, and he knew that they would love him. I have no idea how this happened, but he just knew, like this little bird.
We have a Thanksgiving song kind of to teach you. It's Table of Plenty. Just join in whenever you feel ready. The words will be on the screen, and the tune is in, well, the words and the tune are in the little green book, 3173, Table of Plenty. Wanda and Anna are going to light our Advent candles.
As our nights grow longer and our days grow short, we look on these earthly signs, light and green branches, and remember God's promise to our world. Christ, our light and our hope, will come.
Loving God, as families come together this week to give thanks around tables laden with food, open our hearts and minds to the needs of others. so that your children may be brought out of the exile of poverty and want to dine together at your feast of love. Amen.
Today's scripture comes from the book of Ruth, in the first chapter. During the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. A man with his wife and 2 sons went from Bethlehem of Judah to dwell in the territory of Moab. The name of that man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They entered the territory of Moab and settled there. But Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. Then only she was left, along with her 2 sons. They took wives for themselves, Moabite women. The name of the first was Orpah, and the name of the second was Ruth. And they lived there for about 10 years. But both of the sons, Mahlon and Chilion, also died. Only the woman was left, without her 2 children and without her husband. Then she arose along with her daughters-in-law to return from the field of Moab, because while in the territory of Moab, she had heard that the Lord had paid attention to his people by providing food for them. She left the place where she had been, and her 2 daughters-in-law went with her. They went along the road to return to the land of Judah. Naomi said to her daughters-in-law, "Go, turn back, each of you, to the household of your mother. May the Lord deal faithfully with you, just as you have done with the dead and with me. May the Lord provide for you so that you may find security, each woman in the household of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. But they replied to her, "No, instead we will return with you to your people." Naomi replied, "Turn back, my daughters. Why would you go with me? Will there again be sons in my womb, that they would be husbands for you? Turn back, my daughters. Go. I am too old for a husband. If I were to say that I have hope, even if I have a husband tonight, and even more, if I were to bear sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you refrain from having a husband? No, my daughters. This is more bitter for me than for you, since the Lord's will has come out against me." Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth stayed with her. Naomi said, "Look, your sister-in-law is returning to her people and to her gods. Turn back after your sister-in-law." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to abandon you, to turn back from following after you. Wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do this to me, and more so, if even death separates me from you." When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped speaking to her about it.
Here at Christ Church, we are invited to question together. Question the Bible, question the traditions of our faith, question the social conventions that surround us every day. One of the questions today, as Gail so beautifully laid out for us, is what is a family? As you look around the table this Thanksgiving, look at the people sitting there in the chairs around the table about to tuck into turkey and all the trimmings. Do they look like that Mayberry RFD family that our society has held up as the norm for way too long? Thinking about a couple we know, dear friends. They wanted children, but it just wasn't to be. People keep asking them, when are you going to start a family? And they look at each other and say, we are a family. What is a family? This is one of the questions that the book of Ruth invites us to ask. To understand the story of Ruth, it's helpful to look at the historical context. What was it like to live in those days? Well, look at how our scripture started. During the days when the judges ruled. Takes us back to the book just before Ruth in the Bible, which is the book of Judges. And the last line of the book of Judges goes like this. In those days, there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Sounds pretty ominous, and it was. That's the final verse, and it is repeated several times in the book, but the author ends it just that way. You know, every nation has its bad times, times that seem to bring out the worst in people. In the history of God's chosen people, one of the lowest points comes here at the end of the book of Judges. God had freed the people with a mighty arm and an outstretched hand from slavery in Egypt, as told in Exodus and Numbers and Deuteronomy. They came into the promised land, they conquered it, that's the book of Joshua. And now it's 10 generations later. Seems like they've forgotten anything they ever knew about God, about the covenant, about being a people chosen and precious and holy. So the author of Judges sums up the tenor of an entire age when he says, in those days, there was no king in Israel, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Once great, now morally bankrupt. Just to illustrate the moral abyss to which the nation had sunk in that time. The story that Judges ends with in 19 and 20, chapters 19 and 20, tells of a traveler passing through Israel. Now think about hospitality mores in those days and how critical it was to offer hospitality to a guest. It was one of the primary values of this culture of Israel. So a traveler's passing through Israel, takes a room at an inn, and that night he is confronted by a gang of criminals. They want to beat him up and take his money. So thinking quickly, he offers them his concubine instead, Bible name for mistress. What a morally terrible idea. Of course, the only reason was so he could save his own skin. After she's brutally murdered, the man retaliates. This sets off sectarian violence in all 12 tribes of Israel, and the nation descends into civil war. Israel, once faithful, now teeters on the brink of total annihilation. That's the account that would have been on the front page of the paper that would have arrived on your doorstep the day the story of Ruth was told. The Bible is much more contemporary than many people realize. So we close the book of Judges, and then if you turn the next page, we come to the book of Ruth. What is it doing here? It doesn't seem to belong here. In fact, what is Ruth doing in the Bible at all? That's the question that is most often asked about this little book. Just when what we really needed was a big story of God rescuing the people, sending a great king or an army or at least one great warrior, or the promised redemption, we get the book of Ruth. Just when our minds are full of the nation's disaster, when we're thinking about corruption in high places, about the moral character of the age, we get a little story. We go to a small stage. It's set in a foreign country called Moab. It focuses on a single Hebrew family who were really refugees there. They went to Moab because they were hungry. There was a famine going on in Israel. Man's name is Elimelech. His wife's name is Naomi. They have 2 sons there in this foreign country, Mahlon and Chilion. But don't bother to remember all these men's names because all 3 men die off very quickly in the story. And in 5 lines or less, we are left with 3 widows. Naomi, whose husband Elimelech has died, and Naomi's 2 daughters-in-law. Orpah was married to one of Naomi's sons, and Ruth was married to the other. 3 widows stuck in a foreign country. Moab, a despised place to an Israelite, with no possible source of income or security, a sure recipe for tragedy if there ever was one. Now, Jewish law did provide for situations like these. If a woman lost her husband, she should turn to her husband's family. Her brother-in-law, if she had one, was obligated by law to marry her and provide her with a home and children. So Naomi could have found this hypothetical brother-in-law and married him and raised sons. And the sons would be there to take care of her daughters-in-law. But Naomi says to Orpah and to Ruth, that does not make so much sense. First, I'm a little old for this. Even if I got lucky and found a husband tonight, what are you going to do? Sit around here and wait until they get to be old enough to marry you? So it's not surprising that Naomi urges the girls to go back to their own country. Go back to your mother's house. For your own survival, I give you my blessing. So Orpah kisses her mother-in-law and leaves. Orpah does what is expected of her. She does the customary thing, the sensible thing. She returns home. But Ruth does the unexpected, the irrational, even the slightly crazy thing. She begs to stay with Naomi. She clings to her. Ruth chooses to become nameless. She chooses a relationship with someone who can offer her nothing at all in the way of a husband and security and home. Ruth lets go of her faith, her family, her nation, and her claim to a husband. She chooses Naomi as her family. Wherever you go, there I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, your God, my God. Was it the right thing to do? At this point in the story, it would be hard to tell. Ruth seems to be making a commitment she can't tell the outcome of. She's stepping out purely in faith, taking that leap like that little bird. She is creating covenant. Now, we're not going to tell the whole story today, but as you may know from reading it before, Ruth and Naomi go back to Israel together. Naomi, remember, she has a relative named Boaz. Ruth goes to work in the fields of Boaz, gleaning. Boaz is attracted to her, maybe not even so much for her looks as for her integrity. Boaz has heard how faithful Ruth is to Naomi. So despite the fact that Ruth is a foreigner, Boaz begins to fall in love with her. So we have a love story. A story of a woman who risked everything and in the end received a new family, a new identity. And the whole thing is capped off by the birth of a baby boy. Ruth gives him back to Naomi to be her next of kin. He shall be a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age, she says. The baby's name is Obed, meaning son of Naomi. He becomes the father of Jesse, who becomes the father of David. And we all know that Jesus was in the line of David. It's a lovely story, but it doesn't answer the question, why is it in the Bible? The reason is not that anything terribly dramatic happened. No wars were won or lost. No great kings arrived on the scene in the nick of time. No great visions were seen. No voices in the thunder and lightning. Ruth is included precisely here at the end of Judges to say that this is sometimes how God works. In small ways, in everyday events, God's character shines through. It's all in that little Hebrew word, chesed, which appears over and over in this story. Chesed is a Hebrew word which means compassion and kindness and loyalty and everlasting love. This word appears over and over in the Bible, but it almost always refers everywhere else to God's activity. As in the familiar phrase, the Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast chesed. Only in this book, it's Ruth herself who shows chesed in clinging to Naomi, in creating a covenant in the face of very uncertain circumstances where there is no hope of reward, in the lives of two forgotten widows, and how they relate to one another on a daily basis. In the love Ruth shows for Boaz, an older man who needed what all of us need, to be loved. The book of Ruth portrays human beings doing what God wills for us as the best of human life, being family, practicing chesed, kindness and compassion above and beyond the call of duty. God's own character is revealed in a widow, a migrant, a foreign woman. Do you remember how Scripture started today when Dave started to read what was its very first line? During the days when the judges ruled, there lived a man named Elimelech and his wife Naomi. In other words, even in the days of the judges, there was chesed. In the worst time morally in Israel's history, God did not choose to reveal God's self by sending a powerful king. God chose a small family scene, a relationship between two widow women, to teach us the power of chesed, of compassionate and steadfast love. In the time of Judges, God's character shone through. There's an unbroken line of grace coming from the most unexpected of places. This connection between the story and the story of Jesus is not just in the genealogy of his line, although if you look in the beginning of Matthew, you'll see Ruth's name. Or in the fact that both these stories happen in Bethlehem. It's in the very character of this story. In another time, a little bit later, of moral and spiritual decay and dissolution, in a later time when people were crying out for a great and powerful king to come and save them, the character of God was shown in a manger. We call Jesus Son of David. We could just as easily call him Son of Ruth. The other day when I was putting my winter clothes out and my summer clothes away, I came upon this sweatshirt I used to wear years ago, and I don't even remember having it. Haven't worn it in a long time. But I love what its message says. A family is a circle of friends who love you. May you be surrounded by family this Thursday and every day. And may the God whose character is chesed, who is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love, be among us and with us. Amen. So at this time in this congregation, some of us like to get up and walk all around the room and greet everyone. The peace of Christ, you may stay right in your own spot if you'd rather. Hugs, fist bumps, shoulder pats, smiles, whatever you would like to offer to each other, to be the community of Christ on a journey together. Peace of Christ be with you. And our hymn is How Can We Name a Love, verses 1, 3, and 4. It's in the hardback hymnal 111, or it'll be on the screens as well.
Hi folks, my name is Sherry, and today I'm going to be leading our prayers. First of all, I just want to have a big shout out to the tech team, who we don't see but are always a big part of our services. Thank you so much. Secondly, if any of you have ever thought about leading the prayers and go, gee, I wouldn't know what to say, let me share a secret with you. Google is your best friend. I just want to let you know that I do not rate these, but a little bit of research and you can find things that really speak to you, and I'd like you to consider in the future, being part of the service, whether it's doing the Bible reading or doing the prayers or something, and it's all good. So, on the way here today, I saw a pretty bad car accident over on I-90. It looked like the car had not only crashed, but that it burned also. And so today in our prayers, I would like us to remember the people who were involved in the accident, and especially all of the emergency workers who are out there in such nasty weather and are out there all the time for us. The firemen and the police people and the tow truck drivers and the ambulance people and emergency people in the hospitals, and just all those people who show love to us in a way that we kind of take for granted or don't have to think about very often. And I was also thinking along those lines of the family of Trooper Pratt, who recently died in a horrific accident, and what a blue Christmas it's going to be for his family and for many people as we go through the holidays, and keep those all those folks in prayer. And also coming into the holidays, to keep in our thoughts all of the children who every sparkle and every candle and every gift and every window of every store just fills them with delight and gives us hope and joy for going forward. Please bow your heads in prayer with me. Comfort us with your love, O God. Wrap us in your strong embrace. Shelter us from the storm, O Lord. Envelop us in your tender care. By day, we pour out our heartbreak to you. By night, we give you our racing thoughts. In you, we take refuge. In you, we will not be afraid. For you hold us strong. You hold us safe. Calm our fearful hearts, O God. Still our anxious minds, O Lord. For all our lives are found in you. All our being is given to you. All of our hope begins in you. And let us join together in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And now the ushers will bring forth our gifts. God of grace, it is our delight and devotion to give these gifts to you. All we are and all we have are yours alone. Accept this joyful offering as a token of our abiding love. Use it to bring peace, justice, and comfort to all the world. Amen.
Our hymn is The Trees of the Field, and some of us have asked the beautiful arrangement up here of the cornucopia was made by Marilyn, and we just want to thank her for this gorgeous visual for our thank. And Mike also has an announcement to be careful on the parish steps. They may be icy even though they have been salted, so hang on to the railing if you go out that direction. Our song is The Trees of the Field. It's a really rousing, it has a couple of claps in it too, so number 2279, feel free to stand if you are able.
Joy and be led forth.
Hodiah Mosque in the back. If you haven't signed it yet, please take that time because I'd like to get it in the mail for Thanksgiving. And now go forth with joy and with peace to be family to all those you meet, those you've known for years and years, those you may be new to. Share each one of them the chesed, the compassion, the steadfast love of God.